Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja, and I am with the American Muslim Community Foundation. Today on the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast, I'm so excited to have on Najah Abdul-Qawiyy. She is the Arts and Culture Director from an organization called the Muslim Sisters of Staten Island. Welcome to the show, Najah.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Nice to be here.
Walaikum assalam, of course. We'll get into what MSSI is all about, but I
Mhm.
first want to give our listeners and myself just an opportunity to learn more about you. So tell us everything we need to know about Najah.
Oh, that's a solid question, right? It's a little slightly loaded. Um, so a little bit about me. I'm in my mid 20s. I graduated with my master's in creative art therapy. So, inshallah, one day I'll be an licensed art therapist. We'll see how things goes with COVID and licensure. As you can tell, I love art, aka art therapy. So I do poetry, drawing. I host like open mics in my community. I'm very big on doing like social activism. So I've held like protests and
hmm
art of protest events. Attended a lot of different things to support those in the community that are oppressed. Um, I like nature. I'm a big nature fan, so you'll find me oftentimes going to parks or trying to do anything that's about like health and fitness, even though I am not the healthiest person all the time. But I would say those are like the most major things about me. And I love dinosaurs, so like that's a fun fact.
Yes, never lose that. I literally just found something. It was like a triceratops
Hmm.
little play thing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a hold on to
Oh
that.
yeah, no, I am that person that has had their like childhood dinosaur encyclopedia from like the fourth grade. Like I'm that kid.
Yeah, it's like, the wonder of dinosaurs kind of unfortunately diminishes in adulthood sometime at some point in
Mhm.
time. And they were just so fascinating to me as a child that it was all about the curiosity. And I think that is why I ended up liking science and biology a little bit more
Mhm.
than other topics. But um, yeah, you said you have your master's in art and you want to become a licensed art therapist?
Yep. So I have my license. I wish I did. No, I have my master's in creative art therapy, and then I hope to get licensed in specifically art therapy.
So and this might be a stupid question, and I'm allowed to ask stupid questions because I host this podcast. Um, so is it that you are helping people through art, or
Mm,
what is the basis
yeah,
of it? Yeah.
yeah. No, it's literally it's helping people through art. So many different populations. So I've like worked with people with inpatient psych. I've worked with people with learning disabilities. I wanted to work with people who were incarcerated, but I didn't get that internship, unfortunately. So like it's really utilizing art as a medium to help people express themselves, either
Love it.
verbally or non-verbally. Because sometimes we have a lot going on, and like we can't really express it, with
Yeah.
words or even sometimes writing. So just like delving into like a paint or
hmm
clay or just scribbling on a page, even if it doesn't get out exactly what you want to say, might get out whatever emotions or thoughts are flooding your head.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see the value in that. And
Thank you.
I, you mentioned poetry. I was big into it. Senior year of high school, I took a
Hmm.
poetry class, and that kind of led me to explore a lot of different things from social injustice. And then through college, I hosted Poetry Slam annually
Nice.
through Amnesty International. I was the involved, and we would get like hundreds of people showing up, and by like I was like that college student that took 7 years to graduate. So by the seventh year, it was like popping. Like it was the event that everybody was
Nice.
looking forward to. We did like an art show with
Hmm.
it, along with like a gallery and then a poetry slam. So it was pretty dope on human rights specifically because it was
Oh,
for
that's
Amnesty
that's
International.
yeah. No, that's
So
dope.
yeah, it was one of my favorite things that I did. And for me, like I loved the expression. I would perform too, maybe I
Mhm.
wouldn't get to the third round, but I was just happy to do it.
Yeah.
And perform and say my piece. And it's definitely something that I miss. And literally just maybe May of 2021, I started writing again. So
Mm.
it'd been a solid like um, 12 years since I'd even
Wow.
done anything. So I definitely see the benefit, and I want to put more time and energy into that and bring it back. But
Wow. That's so that's sorry. I'm just thinking about that. I was like, how long has it been since I wrote kind of thing?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like even though like I put like because I orchestrate like open mics or I
hmm
help people host open mics or I've been
yeah,
guest on open mics before, and I was that person too at college who took like forever and a half to like graduate. Like it took me 5 years to get my undergrad. So
yeah,
whenever anybody's like, oh my God, I'm not gonna graduate in time, I'm like, don't worry about it, bro. Like you're gonna graduate inshallah, right? And like I was a part of a creative writing club. So we would do like short stories, we would do poetry, we would do song lyrics, we would do all these different things, and we would host open mics with different themes
yeah,
like every other month. And I would both host as well as be a part of like the open mics.
hmm
But like for me, most of my poetry usually just comes from me being in like a bad mood, to be very frank, and just letting out those like emotions and thoughts that are just like, hey, I'm gonna rummage your brain, and I'm like, nah, get out of here, and I like pour it onto a page.
yeah.
So
Well, I'm gonna throw a few names out there. I don't know if you will know them, but in
Mhm.
Detroit and in California, they were pretty big into the national U.S. poetry slam teams.
Mhm.
So one, her name is Natasha Miller. She goes by T Miller.
That sounds very familiar.
She's really dope. And then the other is a guy named Rudy Francisco.
No, I'm not familiar with Rudy Francisco.
Okay, you should look them both up, but they were like hosts and they even won our slams and stuff like that in years
Oh,
previous.
nice.
So I definitely that's one of the things. If somebody like writes a poetry book or like something like that, like I always love supporting and just writing and their writing and their journey, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, but T Miller is just phenomenal. She even did like a Sprite commercial. She's
Oh.
performed at a lot of venues nationally.
Mhm.
And Rudy himself, he's got a few couple of good books and um, just very brilliant, both of them in their own ways. But yeah, enough about poetry. Let's chat about what we're here for. So let's hear about you in terms of where you grew up,
Mhm.
how you got to Muslim Sisters of Staten Island. Take us through that journey.
Sure. So, born and raised in Staten Island, still in Staten Island, proudly rep Staten Island, New York. Because a lot of times we get pooped on for just being like the garbage borough, because everyone used to like dump their garbage here like years ago.
Mm,
So like I grew up, my family's from the Caribbean. My mom's like from Jamaica. So like I grew up in like a Caribbean household. I also grew up in like a multi-religious household because the rest of my family is actually Christian. And then I also have other family members who are like Israelites and different things like that. So I've like learned to be around other faiths as well as like other ways of like living people's lives as well as just the immigrant you know lifestyle or being a child of an immigrant. So um, that was very interesting because I feel like it's not like a stereotypical Muslim quote unquote lifestyle because I had that upbringing and those exposure. I went to Islamic private school up until like fourth grade. That was good, but it also sucked. I was that kid that got like bullied a
oh,
lot.
that's too
So
bad. Yeah.
yeah, so I got like bullied a lot for many various reasons. So like wasn't my favorite thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like the Islam part, it was just like people.
Right.
And then I went to public school, hilariously enough, got bullied there too. And I was like, is it me? Like, what's going on here?
It's just part of being a kid.
What's happening? What
Yeah.
did I do? But also too like living post 9/11 era, that's also becomes like an issue. So, that was
Yeah.
most of where a lot of like the bullying came around, with being like the only Muslim kid.
hmm
I like wore hijab at like, fourth, fifth grade, and I was cool with it. Like it didn't like really bother me kind of thing. So for me, I was just like, what is y'all's problem with me? I'm
Mm,
just doing my schoolwork, picked on because I'm the nerdy kid, like just a plethora of just natural like teen drama picking on type scenarios. Um, but I, hilariously enough, segueing back to poetry and kind of segueing back into like where I'm in my career that I'm in now and the things that I do for Missy. Um, my teacher had talked to us about like a poetry contest and stuff like that. I was like, I've never really written poetry. Like, what's poetry? And this is like fifth grade me. And then she's like telling me about it, and she's teaching the class how to do different forms of poetry and like the acronym ties where you like each word is like each letter is like a word or whatever. And I wrote a poem because they're like, oh, you can enter this contest, you can get into like this book, and I was like, oh, sure. Like I wrote the poem, thinking nothing of it because I don't win contests. Like every sweepstake I put in from like the TV shows never got it right, so I'm not thinking anything of it. And I showed my mom the poem. She's like, are you sure you wrote this? I was like, yes, I did. What do you mean? Judging me and everything like that. But yeah, so long story short, I wrote the poem, then it got into the Young Americans anthology for
Oh,
poetry.
wow.
Yeah, so I still have the book somewhere in like my bookcase, but like I was like, Mom, I got into a book, and I was super happy, fifth grade me, and that kind of just led me to be a little bit more creative. I had taken an art class in like elementary school, and I just got more and more involved with like art and expressing myself through that way because I felt like the most natural way for me to.
Hmm.
And then fast forward to like college, I wanted to do psychology because I felt like it was a really needed and an important profession. I at the time had like went to therapy, so for me it wasn't like such an odd thing. Plus I felt like a lot of people within the Muslim community during like 2013 era and before that were very like resistant to the concept of therapy or needing therapy, or that you can go to therapy and still be Muslim and still be religious and still believe in Allah, but also be like, hey, let me tie my camel, right? um
Right.
so eventually the way I found my way to Missy and doing art stuff was because my mom started the nonprofit about 7 years ago. So as any child does, when parent asks for help, child do, right? So that's kind of where I kind of wound up helping my mom with like helping her start her nonprofit. I handled all of like the website designing stuff. I handled all of like the flyer making stuff because I was doing that for a current job I had at the time as the
Awesome.
program assistant, because the program assistant is such a blanket term that basically meant I could do everything for all the departments. Um, so I had like a specific job title. So the more and more I started doing creative things and expressing myself, I really felt like this is kind of like the place that I belong. But I didn't know if I could like couple that together with therapy
Mm.
and with
Hmm.
psychology, because in my mind, it didn't exist. Like art
Sure.
therapy wasn't a thing that's been around for like 50 plus years.
Right.
So one day during one of my internship class, literally the last semester of college. So had no clue what I was doing with my undergrad degree, didn't know where I was
Yes.
going. Literally the last semester, my professor shows us like the APA website, the American Psychology Association website, and like shows us that there's like 64 divisions. I was very confused. Like, we have 64 divisions of psychology. Why do we have so many? Like, what's going on? And as she's scrolling, I see where it says creative art therapy, and I was like, can you
Love it.
can you scroll back up, please? Like, you went a little too fast for me, right? And then she scrolls back up, and I also see like international psychology, which is also something I'm very fond of because I really think it's important to learn other people's languages and
Hmm.
cultures, because I think that's the best way we can connect with one another instead of assuming that people should learn ours without giving the same thing
Nice.
back.
Yeah.
Um, so I literally went the next day onto a computer, searched up APA, went onto the thing, learned a whole bunch about it, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, I want to do art, I want to do therapy, I want to combine it together. And at that time, I wasn't even officially the arts and culture director. I was just the person in charge of media. I didn't have an official title at the time because it was a little bit difficult for me with my undergrad and like me attempting to be like a college student and learn about things and blah blah blah. But yeah, within that same year, which I think was 2018, I started applying to like all the colleges that said art therapy. I was like, I'm applying to you and you and you and you, and just like down the list because like this is what I want to do. Went to open houses, asked questions about it, asked like what I can do with it to really make sure that if I'm paying all this money and going into debt,
Right. Yeah.
for my master's is
Mm-hmm.
going to be in something I actually want to do for at least most of the whatever life I'm potentially going to live, right?
Totally.
Um, so at that same time, I decided to become the arts and culture director because I also saw the fact that there was also a need for people to express themselves within their community that wasn't really being met, and that a lot of times art programs were kind of seen as being for like the hoity-toity, I have money in the bank people, as opposed to like people that shop at Dollar Tree. So
Right.
so I started like implementing like art shows and different things like that into the community to try to one uplift local artists, but as well let people know that you can create art too without breaking your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That is really great. And I was chuckling during you saying you found out about art therapy in your last semester because that's almost kind of how I stumbled into fundraising and nonprofit management. Like
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I knew mosques and like nonprofit organizations existed, and I was always volunteering this, that, the other, but I didn't really see that as like a career choice
Yeah.
until I had an internship at the University of Michigan, and it was the development summer internship program, and it was a friend and mentor that said, "Hey, you'd be good for this internship." Luckily, it was a paid internship. It
Mm-hmm.
was 32 hours in the work and 8 hours in a class, and it was a summer long, and that turned into an extended internship
Mm.
through my last semester, and then did that and started working in nonprofit fundraising right out of college. And back at that time in 2009, especially in the Muslim community, it was few and far between
Yeah.
that were dedicating staff to fundraising. And alhamdulillah, through that journey, been able to help a lot of organizations, make a lot of donors, meet a lot of donors, and help them with their goals in charitable giving and through their
Mm-hmm.
zakat and sadaqah. Um, I've been blessed to work at places like American Red Cross,
Mm-hmm.
outside of the community, and then bring that skill set back to the community through American Muslim Community Foundation. And alhamdulillah, now as a chief development officer at a nonprofit called the Maven Project. So, I think just because you didn't get that internship yet at that prison and helping people through the art program, I'm sure it'll come through sometime for you. Like,
Yeah, inshallah, we'll
you
see.
know, well, and I think within the realm of mental health and therapy, hopefully there are more Muslims getting into art therapy as well. And
Mm.
there's great organizations focused on mental health for the Muslim community, and there are a lot of
Mm.
awesome practitioners like Dr. Rania Awad, who was the second guest of ours on this show.
Mm.
She's phenomenal in her own right, doing a lot of research at Stanford's Muslim Mental Health Lab.
Nice.
So there's so many pioneers in this space, and I'm sure you've heard of like the Black Muslim Psychology Conference and
Yeah.
other organizations that are dedicated to this space. So,
Mhm.
we need people like you going in that route. So more power to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying. Like, interestingly enough, having that conversation. What I did for research? Sorry, my eye is itching, and I have no clue why. Like the most awkwardest times in the world. It was fine
No
till like
worries.
till now.
Take your
Like,
time.
come on now. Anyway, yeah, no. So, my second to last semester of my doing my master's program, like we either do thesis or research, and my brain was just like, because my last year was during like COVID. I mean, we're still in COVID, but like the height of it. So I was like, I'm not doing a thesis. Like that's just a lot. So I was like, I'll do like the basics of research, and maybe if I want to like, do like an IRB proposal interview, internal review board proposal, like I'll do it. And I did my research on Black Muslims and poetry, right? And the effects of
Really
that
cool.
poetry and utilizing the choices of word can have on like the Black Muslim population. There's no real research on
Wow.
the Muslim population, period, really like that, but let alone
Hmm.
like on the Black Muslim population. And in my mind, because poetry and words within history, within Muslims, Islam, and stuff like that has been used so much, right? I thought this would be an easier way of getting people to be involved with some form of therapy, as opposed to being like, oh well, I'm not an artist, all I can draw is a stick figure, I can't do that,
Mm,
right? I get that a lot. So I was like, with poetry at least we can all write, right? For most part, we can all make words, we can all put things together. And so I had did two different ways of having it. One was I asked them a series of questions. They wrote down answers inside of bubbles, and I asked them to create a poem based off of the words that they wrote
interesting.
from their answers, right? And then another one was block poetry, where there was a poems that I got from a assortment of different poets, and I asked them to pick which one they felt like resonated with them, and to block out all the words they felt like did not relate to them. And so I had them read the poem pre-blocking and then post-blocking, and ask them how it made them feel and like what was the process like. And a lot of the responses that I got from the block poetry was that, one, it was easier to use someone else's words to represent themselves as opposed to creating it on their own, on top of the fact that they didn't realize that words that they didn't write could relate to them so well and
Mm,
allow them to express themselves though they didn't write it themselves, right? Same thing with like writing down like the questions. So I would ask them like, what if you could be an animal, what would you be? Like, do you feel like you're a charitable person? Or like, if you could, what's your favorite smell? Or like just different things about them as a person. And a lot of them were like, I didn't realize it could be this creative
yeah.
in regards to stuff that has to do with myself, or I didn't, this memory wouldn't have picked up in my head had I not been writing this kind of thing. So it's just like a difference of creating something on your own, which is semi-structured because there's a structure given to you, but you do the rest, as opposed to something that's a little bit more structured, which you're just taking away. And it was really interesting seeing how people express themselves through written work a lot easier, at least from what I saw from the small pool of people that I had, because I had about 10 people in my pool, as opposed to if I told them, okay, well, draw how you feel, or, what color is your current emotion, or, if you could represent yourself as a symbol, what would that symbol look like? Most people would be like, I don't know, right? So I kind of tried to go with like more of a written approach with this specifically this population, because writing and like is a form of thinking, like of education and
Hmm.
literature and different things like that. We're very big on that in the Muslim community, so I thought that'd be a little bit easier for people to process and digest.
Definitely. And as soon as you said poetry and Black Muslims, two people came to mind. Well, I mean, I can think of a few because there's so many brilliant Muslim poets. But part of the Amnesty International Poetry Slam for Human Rights, one of the first hosts was uh, Nasheed Suleiman, who is
Mhm.
from Michigan. He's known by his rapping name One Below, Binary Star.
Mhm.
So he's like an underground rapper. He actually lives in Egypt, but maybe he's
Mhm.
back in Michigan now. And then the second, which I hope you know of, same last name, but Amir Suleiman.
Mhm.
He is like amazing, and
Yeah.
both of them hosted and performed at my shows back in college. So like I've been following them a
Oh
long
wow, that's
time.
so cool.
And yeah, and then Tarek Touré, I'm sure
Mhm.
you've heard of as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, just phenomenal poets in their own right, and people that I admire and respect. And now I get to add you to that list.
Oh, thanks.
Um, So let's talk a little bit more about Missy, and I love that you guys call it Missy. So Muslim Sisters of Staten Island.
Yep.
Why did your mom found it?
So for her reasoning was, and even we've always talked about this, and like, so I sometimes ask him like, so really, is that the reason why? But no, so really for her, she was really trying to start like a sisters halakha, because there wasn't like a sisters group that was founded within the Muslim community here in Staten Island. It's very much so like you belong to this mosque, so you hang out with these people kind of situation. It isn't kind of like you can just meet other sisters and outside of the mosque and like do things together. It's kind of everything's like mosque centered. So for her, she's just like, I just want to like have a sisters thing and like a sisters halakha. And she's like, a lot. She was hearing like the complaints of like the different sisters in the community that would come to the halakas that she would have, and she was just like, yeah, no, we got to do something about this. Like, because unfortunately the masjids weren't doing a lot of things that they needed at the time with like either programs for children or for women or reverts and different things like that. So alhamdulillah, she was able to start Missy, Muslim Sisters of Staten Island, in 2014, and kind of start different programs for like health and wellness, for women empowerment. That year later we had our Muslima ball, which is like our prom. So for
That's
most
awesome.
times, so people don't
Yeah.
necessarily go to prom or can't afford
Hmm.
prom, depending on like, if they go to Islamic school or not, right? So we started doing that and eventually developing it as a woman empowerment event where it isn't just for us to go have fun and dress nice, and which it is, but it also should be like a moment in time where we resonate with one another, congratulate one another. So we started like having it like, oh, if you're graduating this year, like, there's a present, and if you want to shout out somebody and different things like that. We had one year where we talked about the women in Islam and like the power of those different women in Islam. We also had another
It's
year where
really
we
cool.
themed it like things like uniquely you. I named that one. Just trying to uplift women and young girls and their identities as individuals, right? That they don't have to necessarily fit into a particular mold to be, considered like a woman, or to be considered a Muslim woman, or to be considered doing things a certain way. Like you are you, and if you're weird and quirky, that's cool, right? Because that's me. So I'm really advocating for myself. But anyway, but yeah, so like we did those different things. We had like sister swim programs where we had
Hmm.
like a sister come in and teach people how to swim and how to do like what do you call it, like aquatics, like the aquatic aerobic thing. I'm probably
Hmm.
saying it very wrong, but the viewers know what I'm saying. Um, so we had that, and then I, came in with like our arts program and like stuff with poetry and painting and art galleries and stuff like that. And then we recently started, actually, in the last 2 years ish, I want to say, with COVID. My brain is like, did that really happen? I don't know. Um,
Everything's a blur. Yeah.
Time is seriously warped. It's really crazy. But most of this year is basically done. Um,
It's wild.
we have what's called It's Taboo, Let's Talk, and it's something that myself and my mom created because I'm very vocal. So I'm the type of person that will be like, yeah, no, we need to talk about this. I don't know why no one's talking about this. That's wild, right? Like I'm that person, and my mom was like, what if we brought that to like the community, all the conversations that me and her have that are like quote unquote like taboo topics, so like
Mm.
mental health, right? Talking about substance use, gender-based violence, the concept of like intimacy and what that means. We had talked about
Hmm.
diabetes, and we talked about what do you call it? We had recently something for Asian and Black solidarity. Um, we talked about like a plethora of like different things, even like PCOS, like polycystic ovary syndrome. Like, what does that mean? Like, what is that concept of it? Like, how many people actually know what what that is? We talked about like period poverty and like different stuff like that. Like even saying the word period and not meaning the actual dot. At times in certain parts of the Muslim community could be like, oh, blasphemer. Why are you
Yeah.
talking about that? Like, that's a sensitive topic. And I was like, that's
Somebody
probably why I
just
should
stopped
talk about
listening
it.
to this podcast.
Oh yeah, there were like they immediately pressed the escape
Yeah.
key, and they're like, "I'm out." Boom. You know. So like those are the kind of things that like we talk about and that I help like spearhead because it's important for the community to discuss it, right? If we don't talk about things that affect our
Definitely.
community and we ignore it,
Yeah.
all it's going to do is fester and become more of an illness within the community, and then we're left confused and wondering why it's still happening.
Yeah. No,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. And just even hearing more about Missy from you directly, like, I learned about it last year. We got, you know, part of my job at AMCF is just to know about a lot of different organizations. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a nonprofit directory on our website, and there was a family who worked with AMCF that was like, we want to help nonprofit organizations set up endowments. And there's a big
Mm-hmm.
culture of waqfs or awqaf, which in
Mm-hmm.
Arabic means endowment pretty much, in the
Yeah.
Muslim community and throughout our history. So this particular family wanted to select three nonprofits to help them set up endowments. And we're so grateful that Muslim Sisters of Staten Island was one of them that applied. And I'm thoroughly honored that we ended up selecting Missy along with the Son of Trust Foundation and Heart Women and Girls um,
Mm,
last year in 2020. And right now we have that same grant open, so other
mhm,
nonprofit organizations can apply to receive $5,000 towards their endowment if they don't have one already. So we're always looking for new and unique programs, and I think Missy is exactly that. And I'm so grateful that you and your mom and everybody else on the team there have been doing what you guys have been doing to help out so many people in your local community um, gain a sense of community outside of their mosque. Because, it's funny when you were talking about that, I was just like, as much of upbringing I had in my local community, it wasn't limited to my mosque. I could equally
mhm,
go to the mosque down the road and still kick it with the youth group there, and that was
mhm.
very encouraged. But it's not the norm. So I
Yeah.
definitely can see the value in this sort of networking type of entity within the community in Staten Island. Um,
Mhm,
so, yeah, what's something that maybe we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to bring
mhm.
up, or like what other parts of Missy are there that you wanted to share?
Sure. So this has to do with Missy and me. It's a combo. And oftentimes when people ask me to like talk about myself, I forget this all the time. Like it's hilarious, actually. About 3 years ago, we put together something called Geek Out at Staten Island. So I'm a giant nerd. Um,
I don't think we caught on to that yet. You haven't mentioned that about yourself.
so to emphasize more of my nerdiness, like I am into like comic books, anime, video games. Like I go to like Comic Con type conventions. I cosplay the whole nine. Um, that's me, Mario. And so I had a conversation because I'm the youngest person that's actually on the team for Missy. Everybody else is like much older than me, has kids or like married or something, and then there's just like me, single as a Pringle, young person. And so I brought this to their attention and we talked about it. Like, what is it to be a geek? What does that mean? Are we bringing like fitna by bringing in certain entities? Like, because this is open to the public, it isn't just for Muslims. Like, a lot of things we do are open to non-Muslims as well.
Nice.
And so why when I talk to them about it, and the premise of it is like, a lot of times people have to travel to other places for conventions. Same thing too, Muslims may not feel comfortable going to other conventions because there's so many people, there's nowhere for them to pray. There isn't like different types of conversations that have Muslims involved, and understanding that Muslims can also be nerds. So we put together like panels like Muslims and nerddom, and we put together blurred panels, we put together disabilities and cosplay panels, like different things that affect the community and
Hmm.
community members, but also integrating it into geek culture.
So just really quickly, when you say
Yeah.
blurred, I want the listeners to understand
Oh
that
yeah,
that
sorry.
means black
Blurred is
nerds.
black nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm using the lingo without giving definitions. I'll be like Merriam-Webster, Urban Dictionary. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so we started that like 3 years ago because we did see the need for one to give another creative space for people, because putting together props and putting together cosplay and like designing different things or designing your own original character, that's all a form of creativity. And again, couples again with why I went to art therapy and finding different avenues of how to express it, but also talking about like geekdom and mental health and what has these different anime, comic book, sci-fi series have done for people's mental health overall, giving them a sense of belonging, encouraging them to, the power of friendship, right? The power of thinking of others, the power of like forgiveness, letting things go, but also knowing when to stand up for yourself. So like having those different conversations still within the context of being a geek and being a nerd. And then at times we just do silly stuff. Like this year, we plan on having a human hamster ball. So, we,
Really cool.
so like we have like laser tag and like different things like that. We'll have geek trivia. We'll have
Hmm.
cosplay contests to like, so people can show off all of their hard work of trying to make their props and their cosplay and, their different outfits and stuff like that. So, that's something that I had started on my own, but I was helped with the organization to kind of make it happen. And this will be our third year. We actually had it initially as an indoor outdoor convention. Last year, because of COVID, we had it completely outdoors. We used like basically a 2 acre space. Alhamdulillah, we were able to have that by the people that we usually rent out from, because they're like, we can't have you indoors, but maybe you can use this, which alhamdulillah worked great. We're going to use it again this year. So for me, that's my baby, because I helped put it together. But I also feel like it's also a really important part of Missy as well, because it shows that a different I guess, perspective of Muslims, right? That we're not just one way, we're not
Yeah,
just this,
yeah,
like we're not just having, Quran classes all the time. We're not trying to only have Hafiz and Hafizas. Like, we also do regular people, quote unquote, stuff. And I think that a lot of times people forget that about Muslims. They just have kind of like a linear viewpoint of our, and even sometimes we have a linear viewpoint of how we're supposed to be, and
yeah,
having things like it's taboo, let's talk, having stuff like Geek Out at Staten or GhostyCon, having different art stuff, having different things like that helps people realize that we are multifaceted human beings like any other multifaceted human beings. We just happen to be Muslim or choose to be Muslim.
yeah. No, that's brilliant. And one of the people that I learned a lot from, especially moving out to California, is Mustafa Davis. He's a very artistic person into
Mm-hmm.
photography and videography. And he would always talk about not necessarily letting, like, he's not a Muslim photographer, he's just a photographer that's Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
creating that lens and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think what you're doing is really fantastic. It's crossing boundaries, engaging the public, and hopefully introducing more people
Mm-hmm.
to Islam in a way that they would have never thought of.
Yep.
And yeah, that's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of times people get one. I forget this a lot of times because in my mind I didn't create the convention for like money and like different things like that. I created it because I saw a need in the community, and I also like I wanted to geek out a little, so so I didn't really think of it that way. But there are many times, even last year, no one knew for most part that came to the convention that I was running it or that Missy was
Mm,
running it, because the
hmm.
convention has its own logo and it says
Yeah,
powered by Missy at the bottom,
nice. Hmm.
right? So a lot of times people don't know that Muslims are running it or that a
Yeah.
Muslim organization is running it or anything like that. So when it was time to do like the announcements and like everyone's like wondering and like, oh, like when's it gonna start? And I get on stage and I could hear them whispering like, oh, like when's the person who's running the con gonna come up there and blah blah blah. And I'm like, hey everyone, welcome to GhostyCon. Thank you so much for coming. I'm the con creator, blah blah blah. And like seeing the faces drop was just hilarious because because it's just like, oh, you're running it. And mind you, I'm in my cosplay outfit. I don't have anything that says staff. Like, I'm just amongst the crowd. So no one really knew that I was running anything or was in charge of anything. So when they saw me on stage, they're like, I was just talking to her like 5 minutes ago. Like, she runs the convention. I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I personally like being like that. I like being personable. I don't like having kind of like a hierarchical type of situation where it's like, yeah, I run the convention and I'm so important and indeed do. I'd rather be on the same level as like everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to your leadership style. And I think that is really fortunate for Missy and really fortunate for the community that you're in, because,
Mm-hmm.
inshallah, you have a lifelong full of community work ahead of you. Just
Inshallah.
pace yourself, don't get burned out.
Oh
Many,
yeah.
many amazing things to come, it seems like, and a lot of potential. Um,
Inshallah, yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't get into?
Um, Let me think, because like if you asked me like 10 minutes ago, and I was like, nah. No, I think I've kind of like covered like the major parts of like Missy and like how Missy's run, because everybody that's pretty much a part of the board or that helped runs Missy are all either Black Muslim or Latina Muslims. We have a couple of people who are Arab and Desi that are on board because we do want to make sure that our board and the people that work for the organization also represents the community as well. We also have some people who are also not Muslim that are part of
Cool.
MISI as well, because we serve everyone. We don't just serve the Muslim community, we serve
That's
everybody
great.
in the community. So when we have feeding your neighbor, which is like during Ramadan, and we'll go out and like feed people, and everyone's going to be like, oh wow, aren't you guys eating? We're like, oh, waiting for the sunset, and then we're gonna eat. They're like, how are you able to do that? I was like, I am very honest with people. I was like, it takes a couple of days.
Right.
It's not like day one and I'm fine. Like I'm struggling like the first couple of days. I never try to
Totally.
front with nobody about
Yeah.
that. But we do those things. We do, like I said, the Muslima Ball. We've had like bowling fundraisers that we've done with Asia's Women's Center. So like that's a women's Muslim women's shelter that's in Brooklyn.
Right on.
We've also done stuff with like organizations called Beit al House of Community. So they're also another great organization that we work with. So they do like feed ups, they have like security trainings and different things like that. And yeah, like we do a lot of stuff that I'm probably missing. I'm probably forgetting right now, but like that's what's popping up into my dome right now. Oh,
Well,
sorry. My mother is on the side of me. And she's just whispering things over. So that's why if you see my eyes diverting, just for the people on who's looking on the screen to know, it's because my mom's like, don't forget about this. And whisper, whisper, whisper. And I'm like, I can't hear you. But all right. But
well, what is
but
Sister Sophia talking about?
well, Sister Sophia, because I do call her that when we do Missy stuff, because I try to like in that case, I'll do a separation of like being my mom and being like the ED, the executive director. But so she was talking about our sports program. I didn't forget about the sports program, but I did. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, so we do have a sports program that we've been having like frequently. Either it's basketball or it's baseball. We actually had to think volleyball at one point in time. So we have like we try our best to be like versatile with the things that we're providing. It's not we're just providing feed ups. We're not just providing art stuff. We're not just providing women empowerment things. We try to incorporate a whole bunch of things all in one. Like we've worked with like the mayor's art fest for ending gender based violence for a lot of our It's Taboo, Let's Talk stuff. We try to help people become like different ambassadors and advocates for stuff. We've worked with Staten Island Women Who March. So we've done a lot of marches with them. We did a women's march with them back, actually, it's going to be a year in October for Breonna Taylor, Tatia Johnson, like all different women who have died at the hands of police brutality. Um, wait, what? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm
It's all
sorry to the
good. No worries.
BHCs, so
No.
I'm so sorry. What? Okay, thank you. I'm so used to an acronym, so when she said the whole name, I didn't know what she was talking about. So we've worked with the Asian American Federation as well to do a lot of stuff targeted to
Hmm.
like East Asian, South Asian, Southeast Asian. That's also like an untapped population within Staten Island as well. So they help with a lot of our virtual programming. Um, and yeah, so and I would say, like I had said before, we also recently just did It's Taboo, Let's Talk, talking about Black and Asian solidarity and talking about the
Right.
history of it, and that it isn't just a 2021 thing, that it's been a thing since like Frederick Douglass, right? So having different conversations like that, and we actually plan on having inshallah part two, most likely in September, if not in October, because it's a lengthy conversation that can't really be encapsulated within 2 hours on like one day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's really phenomenal. And kudos to.
I'm so sorry. What? Oh yeah, sorry. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no need to
My mom
apologize.
is momming right now. What were you
Well,
saying?
I was saying, so happy for you and your mom and everybody involved at Missy to be doing all of this. And I'm sure people can find more information on your website, muslimsistersofsi.com. You can
Mhm,
also find them on social media, Muslim Sisters of SI. Um,
mhm.
if you're in Staten Island, in New York City, around. I'm sure you can visit some of their events. If
Yeah.
you're national, you can probably follow them online, give them a like, and try to volunteer virtually. And of course, support their work. That's what this is about. We want to be promoting great nonprofit organizations and let more people know about our nonprofit directory, our social impact accelerator, which is an awesome webinar series that helps nonprofits with their capacity building and leadership development. We have our Muslim Philanthropy Awards and annual symposium coming up in November.
Mhm.
So, a lot of good stuff and ways for AMCF to partner with your nonprofit and other nonprofit organizations. You can check it all out at amuslimcf.org. Najah, thank you so much for nerding out with me and being
No
yourself.
problem, Louis. Thank you for letting me nerd.
Of course. So, yeah, that's it. We'll take it there and stay in touch.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Assalamualaikum.
Awesome.